Have you ever just stopped and wondered how our reality, this solid, predictable world we live in, actually stays so, well, stable? So in this explainer, we're going to take a journey from this chaotic idea of constant interference to see how the solid structures of our lives actually emerge.
So let's just dive right into the big question here. It sounds simple, but it's actually pretty profound. Why doesn't reality just collapse?
Okay, so think about it. On one hand, you've got a world that's always in flux. Our values, our social norms, even entire systems, all of it can change. But then, our day-to-day life feels pretty stable, right? Continuous. So how does that even work? That's the puzzle we're going to try and unpack.
All right, so to get our heads around this, we first need to look at the mechanics of it all. We're going to see how stability isn't just there, it's something that's being actively built all the time. And the main tool for this whole process is something we probably take for granted, and that's repetition. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Boring, right? But no, this isn't mindless stuff. The idea here is that repetition is this incredible force. It's the very thing that keeps reality going by locking patterns into place over time.
So, okay, how does this repetition actually happen? Well, it's happening all around us all the time. The words we say over and over, the things we do every day, our little rituals. Our big social and economic systems just keep on running based on the same old rules. And think about all the records, history books, legal documents. They just keep piling up, right? Reinforcing what came before. Every single one of these is like a tiny act of maintenance.
Now, all this repetition, it's not just random noise. It kind of stacks on top of itself, and it turns simple little patterns into something way bigger, structure. And that's really how order starts to emerge from all these repeated actions.
You can actually think of this happening in about 3 stages. First, you've got what you could call fluctuation. Just picture society as this field of constant overlapping waves, ideas, actions, meanings, all bumping into each other. Then, stage 2. Through repetition, some of those waves start to form predictable patterns. And finally, those patterns get repeated so much that they become stable. They start to feel solid, like they're the real world.
There's a quote from the source material that just nails this idea. The truth is not a single point, but the overlapping of orbits through interference. The continuation of that orbit is what creates meaning. So what this is really saying is that truth isn't some fixed point we arrive at. It's more like a process, a path that we all collectively keep walking.
And this is where things get really interesting. It kind of forces a big shift in how you think about things. Because if reality is this ongoing process, then maybe it isn't true in the way we usually think of the word.
It's maintained. Just let that sink in for a second. This is really the heart of the whole idea. Our world isn't just sitting there. It's being actively held together.
So what is reality then, if we use this framework? Well, it's a stabilized interference pattern. All the stuff we just assume is normal, our social rules, our institutions, the whole social order, they aren't these absolute truths set in stone. They're just patterns of interference that have become super stable because we keep repeating them together.
Okay, but think about this. If reality has to be maintained, that implies something really important. It means it's also kind of fragile. So the question becomes, what happens when we stop doing the maintenance?
And that's a key takeaway here. Reality doesn't just last all by itself. It's not the default setting, It's constantly, actively being held up by all those little acts of repetition we talked about.
Which, of course, leads us to the next logical question. If our world needs this constant upkeep, what happens when it stops?
Well, reality starts to shift when that maintenance starts to fail, like when the cycle of repetition just breaks, or when the shared meanings that held a pattern together start to drift apart, or, when the big systems we all count on start to lose our trust and just stop working the way they used to.
So this is a pretty powerful way to look at society, right? But what if we take this idea and turn it inward? Let's push it just one step further. If all of society is just a stabilized interference pattern, then what about our own consciousness? Could our sense of who we are be the exact same kind of thing?
And I want to leave you with one last, really thought-provoking idea from the source material. We are not beings who think, we are beings who observe the patterns that arise within the interference. So it's suggesting that maybe our identity isn't some solid thing that lives in our heads, but instead it's a pattern that we are always observing, and by observing it, we're actually maintaining it. We're keeping it stable. Definitely something to think about.